It's May 1964, and we are diving into X-Men issue 5 from this, what do you call it, Penguin's Classic Marvel Collections. And there for a second, again, there's times where I've said that, I hope when I go into a book with low expectations and then my opinions changed. I love those the most. And that's kind of how this was. I was sort of, just by looking at the cover, it was kind of, I was a little bit like, oh, this is going to be hokey. But this is the book, I think, where Lee and Kirby really started to feel their stride on who the X-Men are, because this starts to feel more like traditional X-Men. So before we dive into anything, it's called Trapped One X-Men. Let's talk about who made it. This is spellbinding story by Stan Lee, dazzling drawings by Jack Kirby, inking Paul Reinman, and lettering S. Rosen. Last issue, while battling the Magneto and his evil mutants, Professor Xavier was injured and seemed to have lost his great mental powers. Now the saddened X-Men return to their headquarters. And I just love how everything has sort of this somber look, because Magneto, what's his name? Xavier essentially helped battle the villain, Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I've not had enough coffee yet, guys. But it cost him his power. So now the X-Men are lost. Bobby's like, it's great to be home. But, if only the professor were okay. So everyone does everything they can to make him comfortable. It sure seems strange to see him sleeping that way, just like any old normal Homo sapiens. It makes me feel so alone. I know what you mean, Iceman. From now on, we will be alone. For the first time without the professor to guide us and help us. He spent countless hours training us to use our powers, Jean. Now we've got to prove we are worthy of that training. And when we think, they are a little paranoid. They think that the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are hot on their heels because someone approaches the mansion. So they all scatter. Now, spoilers if you haven't read this. So if you don't want to be spoiled, pause this video, go get the book if you got the ducats, or this collected trade, and come back. And you come back. Here they find out that it's Jean's parents coming to visit. So everyone's scattered, and they're like, oh God, what are we going to do? Because Xavier's out for the count. And so everyone bolts, and Bobby's just like, don't worry, Jean, we won't give our secret away. And so everyone starts changing. And this little tidbit here really made me laugh, because Beast, or should I say Hank, says, I'm always relieved when I can divest myself of my costume. Actually, I don't really care for the identity of the Beast. I much prefer being Hank McCoy, honor student, although fate never lets me remain that way for long. If you think about it, it's kind of a poignant moment just by itself, but people could just kind of throw it away thinking this is just everyone thinking out loud while they're getting changed to greet Jean's parents. But we went over Amazing Adventures issue 11 when Hank finally graduated and left the team to go work, and ended up not being able to deal with the responsibilities of being an adult, and through sheer hubris took the formula that permanently changed him into the furry beast. And so it was just a very nice callback, and I don't know if the writers went back and looked at this and said, hey, this would be kind of interesting, but just a great little moment there. So here is the first appearance, I believe, of Jean's parents. And it's nothing big. They're just saying, hey, we're on our way to the World Fair, which we don't do anymore. They get to meet all the X-Men individually. And I love how Warren just sort of takes the stage with that playboy persona, and he goes, a real pleasure meeting you, Mr. and Mrs. Gray. We're sorry Professor Xavier can't be with us, but he's unavoidably detained. And that's just how Warren is. He always knows how to step up when he needs to, because he just has that business acumen, and it shows here. And of course, Scott's kind of hanging back. He is shy. Jean's mother's like, those are interesting glasses. He's like, no, stay away, please don't touch them. I'm sorry, I have an eye infection. And then they see the gym, and I like how Cyclops says, clever of Hank, because Hank basically says, we're waiting for new equipment to arrive. And Cyclops is like, clever of Hank. He couldn't very well admit that this is our danger room where we train. But they forget that Scott was standing there, because the way Stan Lee essentially set up Cyclops in the past is he was very mild-mannered, very tempered because of his curse, as he calls it, of his optic blast. So he gets locked in the danger room. He goes, too late. They forgot about me. The door's time lock has trapped me inside. But the danger apparatus is set on automatic. That means the testing device will begin to operate at any second. It started. It was the beast's training period next. These are his special survival problems. Can I handle them? And so he tries to kind of go the best he can after watching Beast, but you can see that he just does not have those abilities, which leads him to basically destroy the entire danger room to survive with his optic blasts. And the artwork here, very Kirby style, and loving the artwork of the reds, the yellows, just makes for a very dynamic, impactful scene. And I'm just thinking while I'm reading this, he goes, my power beam is growing weaker. If the test doesn't end soon, I'll never have to worry about menacing innocent people with my eyes again. And he's saying, none of us are as agile on our feet as Beast was. And I'm thinking, man, if Xavier was smart, he should have everyone, instead of just doing tests that are designed specifically for them, where, Hank has to be quick on his feet, Angel dodge and aerial stuff, it'd be kind of neat to, make them train against their weaknesses and whatnot so they can get stronger. But it's just a moment. Now, here's where we actually see the real Cyclops. It says, but fortunately for Scott Summers and for the world at large, the test does end, and the automatic lock mechanism unlatches the door. It's over. Lucky the danger room is soundproof. Jean's parents couldn't have heard anything. Typical of the caliber of the X-Men is the fact that even in his moments of trial, the youth known as Cyclops thinks first of others. And that's very much Scott, even though people can tend to label him a bad guy. Now, after this kind of quick respite, we're brought back into the story. Mastermind is on Earth looking for the X-Men's base. Can't find it, so Magneto calls him back to headquarters. And this is where we get our first appearance of Asteroid M. Gorgeous colors, though I will admit that my first introduction to Asteroid M was during, I think it was the Jim Lee era of X-Men, when he took over for Claremont, and then I think Nikezia took over, but that was my first introduction to Asteroid M. So seeing it in its early genesis like this is awesome. And I hate how Toad just acts like this happy little dog. He's like, did you do it? Did you defeat the X-Men? We have 7 dogs, so he just reminds me of our most skittish, excitable dog, and not the persona that I like for Toad. But anyway, moving on past that, Magneto says we are going to find another way to get the X-Men. And what happens is they're watching the Olympics, or some sort of track meet or whatever. And again, you can see how serious Cyclops is all the time, because Bobby says, hey, Scott, there's a great track meet on TV. How about watching it with us? Track meets. Professor X lost his powers. We don't know when the evil mutants will strike next, and all you can think of is your juvenile mind is a track meet? Okay, I can take a hint. But in doing so, they see that there's someone out there that can just do leaps and bounds, like Superman-style abilities. And the crowd bum rushes him, thinking it was a hoax. And they're like, we gotta save him. This is what Professor X has trained us for. So they go to the track meet to rescue this young individual. I don't want to give away what happens here. All you need to know is, it was a cool little ploy. And I liked it because then the battle starts. Magneto shows up at the train station, and all hell breaks loose. And it starts to feel like an X-Men book that you would read like during the Claremont era. It just has that feel, the subway battle, all this metal being ripped to capture Warren and taking him to Asteroid M. However, I love as the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants flee. Forget the Toad, run, we have Angel. I'll swap him for that high-jumping fool any day. I know Warren's supposed to be knocked out or something, but he just kind of has this look like, really? Really? And that's just all I can see there. And then the battle proceeds to Asteroid M. And of course, Mastermind begins to take everyone out. Gorgeous artwork there. And you start to see that the X-Men actually start to work together without the help of Professor X. Because even Cyclops says, don't get too cocky. Remember, the only way we were able to defeat him last time was the help of Professor Xavier. And you can see where there's still a little green, where Cyclops just goes into battle, and Magneto has basically weaponized Asteroid M. He gets a big chunk of metal wrapped around his face. Jean is just taken down, can't use her mental abilities. and yet they persevere and work together. And through their failures, they learn to be stronger. And even talk to Quicksilver and Wanda saying, "You don't want to be evil. Let us help you." And Quicksilver saying, "Me and my sister can't trust you. We can't trust Magneto. We can't trust anyone. It's just us." And so you start to see how Petro's sway on, or should I say sway, but how Magneto is basically holding Wanda's saving grace over their heads, so they feel that their what's that word called? Indentured to them, I guess would be the best word to use, is starting to falter, and he's starting to think for himself and the safety of his sister. Now, I'm not going to give away the ending with Professor X, but what I liked about this issue in particular is you start to see how each character is starting to feel like the way we know them now, where Warren's kind of the more playboy who can take matters into his own hand when need be. You start to see Cyclops start to step up, but he is still green. Same with Jean. Beast finally does not talk like the Thing no more, like in the earlier issues where you could very much see how he was supposed to be modeled after Ben Grimm. But we're finally starting to see the Professor, and still the fun-loving Beast, nonetheless, that we all come to love over the years, even though Krakoa kind of destroyed that persona. Anyway, moving on. X-Men issue 5. Excellent issue. Love the Jack Kirby artwork. And I love, even though Warren is kind of that playboy persona, when he is captured, we actually see what happens when his metal is put to the test. Highly recommend it, y'all. And if you have the ducats, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever it is you'd like to get your action figures and comics and grab an OG copy of this. If not, then you can grab it in this Penguin Classics collection, which I'm thoroughly enjoying, and I'm enjoying going over with y'all. And if you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next, subscribe. That way, as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below, or the socials, which I'll make sure to leave links down in the description. So with all that said, I hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.